All right, we'll see if she starts. Keep fingers crossed. Here we go. All right, I'm gonna show you how to get the car off the lift really quick. I'm gonna try and get the Esprit started. I haven't driven it for a while. If not, we can take the Supra, or we can take the Porsche over there. I also wanna try and get the Mustang started today if I have time. It's just really tough to start, but these lifts are really easy to operate. We've got a button right here that lifts it up right there. So we press that. And then this right here releases the brake. So you press that, that opens that up, and this black lever right here lowers it. So we press that in, and it drops down. I just hold the brake open. And we'll see if the Esprit starts. I did not have it plugged in. I really should have. But I've got, you know, battery charger jumper if I need to, and it is dusty. To that light, come on. That's a good sign. We'll see what happens. There's a 3.5 liter V8 with twin turbos. There's the battery, so we'll try and get this charged up. And we can turn the Supra off. It doesn't need to be on. We're in the 98 Lotus Esprit V8 twin turbo. The trickiest thing is the transmission. Is that in? I think that's in. This car is one of my most fun cars. Is that lady waiting for me? Go ahead. But it also has some of the most problems. So there's a trade-off. And believe it or not, this car is actually the hardest for me to get in and out of, even of the Countach, Diablo, all of them, just because it's got, oh, you go ahead. Such a short door, and the door goes sideways. Are they waiting for me? I don't want them to wait for me. Go ahead, okay. This does have a pretty good air conditioning system. It is kind of warm out. The Lamborghinis are okay, but both of mine are kind of worn out and need refreshed. So if you have an old Italian air conditioning system, it's probably not going to be that great. 5-speed manual, twin turbo V8. 32,000 miles. Really feels like a race car, go-kart when you drive this. Pretty light, pretty small, real tight steering. Really fun to drive. Let's turn this up. We'll just bear the heat for now. steering too. So that's kind of the trade-off. You know, the Diablo and Countach will go 60 in first gear, where this will go about 40, maybe a little faster than that. But the twin turbos kick in. I think it is slightly modified. It's got a chip in it, so that makes it a little faster than stock. Of course, the Renault transmission holds it back. Have to be very, very careful driving it. Can't get crazy, can't really bang the gears hard, or else you will blow your transmission. I've heard a couple people say, what did they? Oh, someone said they put, was it a Boxster? A Porsche Boxster transmission in one of these, and they could bump up the power a lot, and that worked well. So, really, if you could replace that transmission with a better one, that would be ideal. But until I heard that, everyone had pretty much said there's not enough room, they won't hook up right, it's just not workable to do that. But if someone found a way to do it, that'd be awesome. I've had this car 7 years now. Seems crazy. It always has the check engine light on, I think from the chip they put on it. I'm in Colorado. I could not get to pass emissions forever because of that. Had it into the shop multiple times, and did find a workaround. But yeah, it's that's one of the annoying things about this car. And the mechanics find, like, you know, the only way we can really make this work is to put the original chip back in, and that's assuming you can find one, and that it wasn't modified to a point where you can't put it back in, and then you're losing a bunch of power. So we did figure that out. Of course, Colorado is kind of turning into California lately, and they're making everything stricter, more laws, more regulations. So that'll be fun. Of course, the problem is speed limits. Up there, but we're not going too fast. We're going okay. Oh, that might not be police. That's just a broken down car. Never mind. Completely destroyed this car a couple of years ago because it started overheating, and I drove it a little farther than I wanted to with it overheating one time, and it started making a nasty sound. I thought, God, I didn't warp the heads or something crazy, or so I parked it for a while, was afraid to take it in, afraid to do anything, and eventually I had my mechanic come grab it and he towed it. I was waiting for the worst news possible, and he's like, oh, everything's fine, you just had a thermostat go out. I'm like, oh, thank you. Because it did not sound good. But I guess it just wasn't, you know, quite running right with it being that hot. But thankfully, it didn't do any damage. This also has kind of a weird driving position. Like, there's nowhere to put your left foot except rested on the clutch, and you don't want to do that. And it's kind of like you got to hold your foot up, which gives you shin splits, or I've got to put my leg way up high and kind of put it on the carpet, which is strange. Like I said, a lot of people say the Countach is not built well, which is built amazingly well. It feels more solid than this car. I think this car is built decent, but it's definitely a hand-built British car. The Countach feels super solid. A lot of people say the Countach is uncomfortable. I'm 6'1". I have plenty of headroom in this car. That's not a problem. The problem is I keep wanting to go too fast. That's the problem. But the legroom is tighter than the Countach. My legroom is definitely tighter. And then getting in and out of it, the door is very short and small, and so I've got to like pull my legs in while I'm getting in the vehicle. And it's especially, you know, I've got a back that is usually okay, but once in a while I hurt it playing golf or something or other, lifted weights like I did this last time. And if my back is sore, it is rough trying to get in here. And it feels, you know, a little bit cramped from me to the steering wheel too, where the Lamborghinis actually feel like they have more room inside, even though everyone says they're cramped, it's horrible, it's awful. Now this car definitely has more visibility out the back. I can see pretty good out the back. It's can see out the mirrors okay. So the visibility wise is definitely better out the back. Pretty similar out the front. You can see fine out the front of the Lamborghinis. This is probably one of my loudest cars too. It's got a modified exhaust as well. All this stuff was done before I bought it. I actually bought it from a dealer in Texas, just a regular Ford dealership. And they got it on a trade-in, so they didn't really know what they had. I ended up getting a pretty good deal on it, but they had no idea about the modifications, any of that stuff. But I want to get over in that lane, and I can't really do that with Mr. There we go. Thank you, sir. And it's supposed to have a glass, it has a glass roof, sorry. It's supposed to have a metal roof too. And the dealership actually told me at one point, yeah, we've got it. And I'm like, okay, how do I get that back to Colorado? And then I never heard anything after that. So I don't know what's going on here. Why is that car driving off the road? Huh. So I do have a blue roof, maybe somewhere in Texas, and I haven't ever needed it or wanted it. I'm sure it would be nice to have, but I think the guy who was working there, did he quit or something happened to his, I feel like maybe his wife got sick while we were talking, and so I didn't want to bother him or bug him with that going on, and then I just never did anything after that, but oh well. It is a bit warm in here now. I think this is probably my most difficult car to drive. This is harder to drive than a Countach. The clutch is kind of stiff. That's never bothered me in the Countach. I know some people say, oh my God, you can't, if you're big enough to drive the clutch in a Countach, you're too big to fit in it. I never thought it was that difficult to do the clutch, but I don't know. Definitely not in the Diablo. Diablo's fine. Transmission in the Countach is easy. Shifting is not hard. This, though, is tricky because the gears are so close together. You're not always sure what gear you're in. You know, the Countach has a gated, a gate where you know exactly what gear you're in. You can look at it, oh yeah, this one, you're never quite sure. So you hope you're in the right gear. And sometimes I feel like I'm in gear, but I'm not in gear. I'm just barely out of it. And it's just a little tricky. And the clutch, you've got to be real gentle and real careful with it. It's really easy to kill this car. And yeah, it is actually definitely, I think, my most difficult car to drive. I've let a few other people drive it too, and the same thing. They're like, "Oh my God, how do you drive this thing?" Once you get used to it, it's not bad. But compared to other cars, compared to other manual transmissions, it's like, ooh, this thing is very touchy, very difficult to know what gear you're in. You can't really, there's just not, you don't have that feel that you often have in other cars until you've driven it many, many, many times. it's a V8. It's a 3.5 liter flat plane V8. I don't know how to describe. You know, you can hear it in videos and stuff, but those don't always, you know, translate exactly to what it sounds like in real life. It definitely does not sound like a muscle car V8. Boy, it's an interesting sound. It sounds good, I think, but it's not real deep and gurgly, but it's not high pitched, you know, either, like some V12s can be. It's kind of grumbly. Love to race this in my Diablo sometime. This being 98 V8 twin turbo, my Diablo being the naturally aspirated V12. Of course, that'd be awful if we were racing and we were to crash into each other or something crazy. And you'd probably want to do it from a roll, because neither one of these cars do you want to try and launch. You know, I see a lot of YouTubers and different people drag racing, my quotation marks here, supercars from the 90s and 80s, and they're starting from a stop. And it's like, whoever's a better driver is going to win, no matter what. You can tell one person's, you know, willing to give the car a little more than the other person, they're going to win. So it's real tough to compare cars when you see that kind of stuff, unless you're going from a roll, and then it's just, you know, put your foot on the floor and see what happens. But a lot of those, in some of those drag races too, you see they're not even coming close to red line. They're babying the car, and they talk about how slow it is. It's like, you're not going to drive it. Of course it's going to feel slow. So my whole point is definitely a roll race between those two if I do one. So I'm not launching the Diablo. So I've heard it's all-wheel drive. You can get a massive jump on that car if you know how to launch it right. You like drop the clutch at 6,000 RPM. But if you do it wrong, you can burn out the clutch in 2 tries. That's according to Balboni, the Lamborghini test driver. So I am not taking that chance. And then this car, you know, you don't want to put that much pressure on the transmission at all. So I would kind of want the person driving the Diablo to shift real lethargically too, because I'm a lot more comfortable banging gears in the Diablo than I am this. The Diablo and Countach, the engine, transmission, they just feel rock solid. And they are if they're maintained well. This one is more like it has rocks in it that could break everything at any point. Here we are at my other laundromat. I just came back from Kersey laundromat. That's not how I made my money. I made my money with real estate. But the laundromats are kind of a fun side gig and interesting, and I love quarters. So, and I love businesses, and I love trying to make businesses do better, and that's really fun with these. So, we're here, and the Esprit made it.